By show of hands, how many people here would identify themselves as an artist? A designer? Or maybe you're a little bit of both, none more than the other, and everything in between? Okay, I'm right there with you. And I'll be honest, sometimes I feel like my identity as a creative silos me off as an abstract contributor to society. Like my skills are conceptually helpful, but somehow in another world than what we might find with other professions. Of course, it's all a little more complicated than that. I don't need to mention news headlines or staggering statistics to argue that our world only seems to be increasingly in disarray, in desperate need of change. And what I want to challenge is the role that creatives can have in instigating change. The biggest lie, I think, is being told that our value is only as good as what we're able to output. The big painting, the perfect photograph, the innovative product. Our value is so intrinsically tied to what we make. This, in and of itself, isn't inherently bad, but what's problematic is when we become conditioned to think that our creation is all we can contribute to society, as opposed to the very act of being creative. So we congregate with each other. We form bubbles in the form of schools and museums, studios and firms, because we can recognize the value of each other's creativity. It's safe and nurturing. But that doesn't mean it's the best place that we can grow. And I'm here to say that being creative is an invaluable asset to places that have yet to see what creativity can do in catalyzing meaningful change. Now, I know what you're thinking. Joel, I'm not a lawyer or a politician or a insert X profession that we've deferred this capacity to drive systemic change. And to that, I say, yeah. That is a superpower. I want to share what I have found in my work in policy and legislation as a case study, as they turned out to be greater vehicles for my creativity than one might think. In fact, it was my background that allowed me to uniquely collaborate in these spaces, because I found that we as creatives, we pay attention to the details. We understand our material limitations, and we can make ideas a shared reality. I'd met a woman once, we'll call her Laura, who was struggling to access mental health care with the federal health insurance program, Medicaid. It wasn't necessarily because she didn't qualify, rather, when she would go to a mental health care provider in her home state of Rhode Island, she would find that they only spoke English when her home language was Portuguese. She wouldn't be alone in this, as almost 80% of mental health care centers in Rhode Island reported speaking only English. Yet nearly 15% of people on Medicaid were people whose English was not their first language. This averages to about 45,000 people, and this is just in Rhode Island, America's smallest state. These are the kinds of details that are overlooked when enacting policy. On an abstract level, a program like Medicaid seems great for expanding access to healthcare for low-income communities. But policies like this and so many others fail to zoom into the individual and map out what their day-to-day experience actually looks like. But in my work as a designer, all I did and all I wanted to do was center around a user or an audience. In this case, it's a matter of looking at exactly who uses Medicaid, and if they're not speaking the same language as their providers, well, then our attention should be there. We as creatives not only care about what we create, but we care about how it exists after it's created. To be able to pay attention to the details, effectively considering exactly who is impacted and exactly how they're impacted, is a level of detail that policy has proven not to lend itself well to. But as creatives, we'd prioritize it from the very beginning. Okay, I'm starting to see how my creative process can be applied. I wonder what else is possible. I began to look at policy as if it were a material, a medium, which is my second point. In art and design, we know how a medium can greatly influence your end product. If I wanted to make a chair, it would look very different whether I chose to use wood or metal or plastic, depending on each material's strengths and limitations. In the same way, we can interrogate where policy is an effective means to a problem and where it falls short, inviting the strengths of other mediums to build a well-rounded solution. As a part of the executive order for advancing racial equity, I worked with a team to survey how people experiencing homelessness were counted on the census, a system dependent on household addresses. People experiencing homelessness, a system that needs your home address. Through research, we heard everything from, what I need most is more capacity to house the people that come through our doors every night, to, I don't even know how to navigate the census database to get the data I need to apply for grants and federal funding, to, I can't rely on a system that was designed to exclude people with no home address. It was clear as day. Any new policy as a single approach, no matter how innovative, would fall short at chipping away at an entire system. Here, policy was good for setting the foundation and direction of work focused on equity, but so much more needed to be done if we thought we had a chance at the problem. My team then began to invite the strengths of new mediums to build a holistic solution, like introducing integrated technology and expanding the workforce capacity of on-the-ground food banks, shelters, and soup kitchens. If there's one thing we as designers and artists know, it's that there are as many ways to approach something as our mind allows. So long as we're critical of our strengths and limitations, as if every method to a question was simply a medium, there's infinite potential to do better, more effective work with the problems that our world faces today. A year later, I was in Colorado, where I learned my third point, in that we make ideas a shared reality. The state of Colorado had recently rolled out the Colorado Privacy Act, aiming to protect people from having their personal data extracted and sold by private companies. When you go on a company's website, they can hide things about the way they use and sell your data and things like the annoying cookie banners that you're forced to accept. I remember thinking, well, that's just not cool. These companies are just trying to trick you. But when it came down to trying to articulate exactly how people were being tricked and how to enforce against it, my team was reaching a standstill because we couldn't quite visualize the intricacies of consumer data privacy and how legal writing could converse with digital user interfaces. But what if I could sketch, prototype, visualize an idea that we otherwise couldn't articulate through legal writing? Oh, we talked about optimizing user interface frameworks for consumer data privacy and user autonomy. Did we mean something like this? Creativity is not just a way of thinking, but it's also a way of doing. And the tools we can share can help others see the future that we see. In doing so, a path of hope opens where collaboration is foundational, democracy is more engaged, and progress is accelerated. We'll never know what good we can do in a space until we find out ourselves. As artists and designers, we are not only witnesses of change, but we are conductors. We see the details, we understand the limitations of our mediums, and we can make ideas a shared reality. Now, I can't in good faith wrap my personal experiences up in a tidy bow, proclaiming that Medicaid and homelessness and data privacy have all been magically solved because some rambunctious, self-declared creative, me, gave his magic touch. Not at all. There is so much more work to be done, not just with the problems I mentioned, but really in any corner of the world. And to be clear, this is not a rally to have everyone in the room run for public office or work in government either. However, this is an invitation to think critically about the roles artists and designers have and dare to step into other worlds that might need us. It's artists, designers, architects, and creatives who can be pivotal in the very places that we're not normally found in, pioneering a better world as we know it. This is a love letter of hope, at least for me. And I hope we believe in the power of our creativity. I hope we assert ourselves in places that we're not normally found in. And above all else, I hope we fight for what's good. Thank you.